What is new today for our Palestinian brothers is not the nature of the crimes committed against them, which will remain an inherent feature of the Zionist occupation, part of a constant policy that the occupier has never abandoned over the last 7 decades. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has held bilateral talks with several of his counterparts in Kampala, Uganda, on the sidelines of his participation in the preparatory ministerial meeting of the 19th Summit of the Non-Aligned Movement, according to a ministry press release. Communication Minister Mohamed Lagab has called from Tunis for moderation and rationalization of the use of artificial intelligence. In his closing speech at the media conference organized by the Arab State Broadcasting Union ASBU under the theme Media in the Era of Artificial Intelligence, Opportunities and Challenges, Mr. Lagab mentioned the problem of the relationship between man and technology, emphasizing that despite the apprehensions aroused by the almost obsessive rise of artificial intelligence, it would be wise to use it with moderation and in a rational manner. Meanwhile, Mr. Lagab evoked the suffering of the brotherly Palestinian people precisely in Gaza following the barbaric aggression of the Zionist entity. The minister took the opportunity to pay tribute to the memory of the martyrs of the profession, the journalists who fell on the field of honor, highlighting the heroic role carried out with dignity by journalists on the ground in support of the Palestinian cause.
We hail the outcomes and recommendations of this summit, and we encourage the Arab States Broadcasting Union to be a locomotive for this implementation. On this occasion, I denounce again the deliberate targeting of journalists in occupied Palestine, which left more than 100 killed journalists, which is an unprecedented event in the history in the various zones of conflict.
That was Communication Minister Mohamed Lagab. The Speaker of the Mauritanian National Assembly, Mohamed Bamba Megat, starts today a 4-day visit to Algeria at the invitation of the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Brahim Boughali, according to a press release issued by the lower house of parliament. This visit will be an opportunity to consolidate the excellent relations that have united the two countries for decades and to discuss the possibility of promoting joint cooperation at various levels and raising it to the level of bilateral relations, according to the same source. And finally, the Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea, Jim Ying-pyo, starts today a 4-day visit to Algeria, according to a press release issued by the National People's Assembly. The APN Speaker, Brahim Boughali, will hold discussions with his South Korean counterpart at the APN headquarters next Sunday on ways of strengthening cooperation between the two countries in various fields. The president of the host delegation will then have discussions with the President of the Council of the Nation before visiting several structures and monuments. And with this, we come to the end of this news bulletin for today. Time now for our weekly program, starting with my colleague Aziza Gassi and then with my colleague Hannah Dalilas. For me, I'll meet you again tomorrow for a first edition of our news bulletin in English. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to this program devoted to the wonderful Sahara Desert of Algeria. If you thought that the Sahara was all about sand and camels, then you'd better think again. While you'll get your fix of unwieldy dromedaries and undulating dunes, this part of the Sahara is also home to an alien landscape of twisted stone forests, stark volcanic mountain ranges, and endless black gravel plains, as well as deep dark canyons. It's the trump card of Algerian tourism, and now that the security situation has stabilized in the country, thousands of visitors are heading back to marvel at its eye-popping natural beauty. Stretching from Ain Salah right down to the Mali and Niger borders in the Ahaggar or Hogar National Park, created in 1987 to safeguard the considerable riches of this part of the country. It's one of the largest protected areas in the world, as its heart is the laid-back town of Tamanrasset, resting at the foot of the Broden Hogar Massif. The craggy plateau, that sleepy oasis of Janet, is known as the Tassili, also one of Algeria's protected areas. Its caves and canyons hide an abundance of engravings and paintings illustrating the once blooming plant and animal life of the Sahara. Now we'll talk about Algeria's heartland of the Tuareg, traditionally a nomadic people who have roamed the desert regions of Algeria and its neighboring countries for many centuries. You'll see beautiful women swathed in brightly colored fabrics and refined silver jewelry, and plenty of veiled blue men, as Tuareg men are sometimes called after the traditional color of their robes. The route of Hogar, one of the major routes across the Sahara to the West Africa, is gaining popularity once more after many years in the wilderness. From El Golia, it extends south across the Tedmate Plateau, which stretches on like some sunburnt pancakes, the largest thing in sight be a rock the size of a tennis ball. It then passes through in Ain Salah, a town famed for its salty water, past the canyons and mountains of the Tassili Dimidid, or Tassili. Let's recall that Tassili means plateau in the language of the local Tuareg. And it goes through the steep gorges of Arak, and then on this region's hub, the capital, Tamanrasset. From Tamanrasset, the road continues for another 400 kilometers to Ain Ghazam, which sits near the border crossing into Niger. Much of the area covered in this section is protected territory and part of the Ahaggar National Park. Tamanrasset, or Tam as it is affectionately known, is the jumping off point for exploring the attractions of the Hogar Mountains, the highlight of which is Askrem, which at some 2,800 meters is one of the Hogar's highest peaks. To climb to the peak of nearby Askrem as night falls is to witness most beautiful sunsets over a carpet of peaks. South of Tamanrasset is the Tassili of Hogar, a mystical plateau full of a mushroom-shaped rocket and saffron sand. Well, with this we come to the end of our program devoted to the wonderful Sahara Desert of Algeria. From me, Azza Gassi, producer Mohamed Yousfi, thank you for joining us.
Hello and welcome to Discover Algeria, weekly program in which we'll let you discover or know more about Algerian heritage. Today, the program is devoted to the Berber architecture, which is a vernacular one that goes from Morocco to the Egyptian border, from the Mediterranean to Niger. It has never been influenced by the Arab or Hispanic Moorish style, notably in the southern part of the country. The Berber architecture in Algeria is in the heart of this field where Berbers lived in various regions and in different types of houses. In this program, we'll try to describe in general the different Berber or Amazigh architectures one can find in the various regions of Algeria. Among the most ancient places people lived in are the semi-troglodytes houses, which one can see in the eastern Ores region, for instance. They are dwelled most of the time in lime cliffs, easy to dig. They were efficient to protect its inhabitants from the various weather conditions and predators. Some of the semi-troglodytes are dwelled on the ground level and had attached shelters. Later on, in the Kabylie region, houses there were easily identified with their double-sloping roof covered with hollow roofing tiles. The same style is also present in the eastern city of Constantine. Let's note that similar houses exist in the French Provence region. In this kind of house, back to the pre-Roman era, there's a room, a barn or a stable, and a garret where people, domestic animals and stock were living together without any separation. The house has no window or tiny ones, and the only access is the door. This, by the way, reminds us the Algiers Medina architecture. Some say this is to keep privacy of the house's inhabitants, but others say that because the then inhabitants didn't have the means to build bigger doors. The Berber house can have 1 or 2 floors and either a flat terrace, such as that in the eastern Ores region, around Ksours in western Algeria, the southern Zab and Janet, or a double-sloping terrace, like in the coastal towns of Cherchel and Tnis, or in the Durdura region in Kabylie. In these houses, not only the material used in the construction can vary from a region to another, but also the way rooms are built, around a courtyard, all together or separated. The materials used are stones with wooden structures, mud and clay. The type of wood, for example, depended on the location. Palm trees wood in the desert regions, olive, peach, lemon trees, as well as black locust tree inland and in the coastal regions. One can notice in all these construction types that the external walls are free of any apertures. This is widely in reaction to environmental constraints, as the heavy walls insulated the internal rooms, and the reduction of light was probably beneficial throughout most of the year to face up to hot summers and very chilly winters. The thickness of the walls also prevents from noise coming from the building rooms. The outside walls, made of stones, are either left visible or coated with a finish which color varies from a region to another. Most houses we've been describing are farmhouses, which have also various dependencies such as dressing rooms, stables and barns, and which are independent. This type has survived notably at the borders of the Sahara Desert in the Atlas region. In many regions, a number of these houses was protected by a very high wall used as a barrier. This developed in what is known as qsur, which is the plural of qsar, and which served to protect those living inside and their possessions. In regions where soil with poor grain value was higher than human value, and the qsar served to protect this wealth. While in richer areas, the qsar or qsur structure was mainly devoted to protect human life. Although there is not enough studies on the Berber architecture, the existing constructions, remains and studies help us understand the then Berber people's aspirations, needs and their way to adapt their architecture to environment. This has gone through centuries as generations of Berbers tried, tested and corrected their various building techniques to reach what it is called nowadays climate-responsive architecture, which uses its own techniques and designs in its buildings that are best suited to a particular region and that encompass the region's cultural patterns. That's all for now. Thank you for joining us. From me, Hana Dalil and Nassim Hassini. Bye.